we've seen the fantasy football season, and here's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So right here, Patrick Mahomes, another great season, even with Tyreek Hill traded to the Miami Dolphins in the offseason. And he's putting up at least 25, 30 fantasy points weekly. And this week here in a great matchup of the AFC Championship rematch at the Cincinnati Bengals this week here. I think Mahomes, he wants to come out, he wants to set the tone early. And Joe Burrow, believe it or not, is 2-0 career versus Patrick Mahomes. But this week here, I think we see a big game from him and Kelsey. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's been playing great football. And he's number one this week. Number two, Justin Herbert, the Los Angeles Chargers. So this week here, a good matchup at the Vegas Raiders that can't stop anyone. And we saw it last week, give up 34 points to the Seattle Seahawks. And Herbert, he's got most of his weapons back. Mike Williams, it doesn't look like right now, time of recording this, though, he's going to play in this game, but he's still hitting guys. Keenan Allen's back. Austin Eckler, a great weapon out of the backfield. Gerald Everett's back in the mix as well. DeAndre Carter has been a good slot guy in Joshua Palmer. And with a Raider team that can't stop anyone, I got Herbert. He's 2 this week. Number 3, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So right here, I know a tough matchup tonight at Thursday Night Football at the New England Patriots. But Josh Allen, he's matchup proof. One of the best quarterbacks. I know the elbow probably isn't 100%, but he's still got the weapons. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, even though it's been a down year for him. McKenzie in the slot, and a guy who's going to get you at least 7 to 10 fantasy points weekly with the rushing yards. So right here, Josh Allen at number 3, even in a tough matchup at New England on a cold Thursday night. Number 4, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Hurts, over the last few weeks, his legs are back in the mix here. Last week, he had over 100 yards in the first quarter rushing the football. And this week here versus the Tennessee Titans, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he has another decent game on the ground. And he's pretty much a guy that's going to get 25 to 30 points a week here. Now with A.J. Brown versus his former team, I think we're going to see a lot of that connection in this ball game. I think we could see a mini shootout between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Titans. And Hurts, like I said, he's an MVP candidate. He's one of the better quarterbacks in fantasy this season. And I got him at 4. Number 5, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, another great season here for him. After last season, started off slow and then led his team to the Super Bowl, falling short, though, obviously, to the Los Angeles Rams. But right here, this is a big matchup in the AFC versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And if the Bengals want to take the next step this season, I think this is a ball game they're going to have to get the W win here. And Joe Burrow and Mahomes, they're 1-2 in passing touchdowns this season in the NFL. So Joe Burrow's been on a good pace. Jamar Chase is probably coming back in this ball game. And to have lethal wide receivers, obviously, like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who's been playing great football, especially the last 2 or 3 weeks here. To add in with Joe Mixon out of the backfield coming back probably, and Hayden Hurst, who's been a decent tight end. He's got the weapons. This is a definite shootout written all over it. And I got him at 5. Number 6, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Jackson, it's been an up and down fantasy season here for him. Even though the Ravens, they still got a solid record this year. After last week, though, losing a heartbreaker at the end to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Lamar Jackson, he was using his legs more. And this week here versus a mediocre Denver Bronco defense that has a lot of injuries and obviously traded Bradley Chubb away in the trade deadline to the Miami Dolphins. I think Lamar could find the holes. He's a better quarterback at home, obviously, he's Lamar, than he's been on the road this season. And this week here, I think he has a decent ball game, anywhere from 20 to 25 fantasy points minimum, I think, because I think we're going to see him run the ball more. We know he's not getting much out of his receivers in Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson, who's been up and down. So right here, I think a little more rushing yards we're going to see from Jackson. I got him at 6. Number 7, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. So right here, Tua, it's been a great season for him, especially after the scare a couple months ago where we thought his season was over and possibly his career, the hit he took and the way he reacted after it. But he's been back, and this offense has been dynamic with 2 great receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I know Tyreek Hill's banged up, but I think he's going to give it a go in this game. I know this 49er defense is one of the better defenses, if not the best defense in pro football. But Tua with these weapons, Tua on a hot streak, and a big ball game here for this Dolphin team, especially Mike McDaniel going back to San Francisco where he was an assistant coach with the 49ers under Shanahan. I think this is a big game, and I think Tua, this is a big test for him to see if he's really legit this season. So I got him at 7. Number 8, Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields, he's been a great quarterback over the last month of the season. I know he didn't play in last week's game with the shoulder issue, but right now he's another guy, automatically 8 to 10 fantasy points weekly he's going to get you on the ground. I know this Packer defense last week got shredded on the ground. I don't think we're going to see this Bear team run for 150, 200 yards. With Justin Fields, we know he's a great quarterback at running the football. We know he's not a great thrower of the football, especially now Darnell Mooney, one of his main targets, out for the season. But if Justin Fields does play in this ball game, he's still a top 5 to top 10 option each and every week, and I got him number 8, even not at 100% this week if he plays number 9, Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. The Denver Broncos wish they just didn't trade for Russell Wilson. Number 9, Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So right here, this Seattle team, they knew what they were doing, obviously, trading Russell Wilson away and getting decent draft capital as well. And now Geno Smith has been the starter all season, and he's putting up at least 23-plus fantasy points each and every week on average is Geno Smith. When you got two great receivers like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, that's going to open things up. You got a great rookie running back in Kenneth Walker who makes some plays, catching the ball out of the backfield as well. And this week here versus a depleted Rams team, especially with Aaron Donald out in this ball game, I think Geno's going to roll once again, and a guy to have confidence in with at least 20-plus fantasy points. And I got him in 9, number 10, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So we know Kirk Cousins missed the prime time. He don't get the job done. Versus good teams, he don't get the job done. And this week, no doubt about it, he's versing a good New York Jet defense here coming to town. But Kirk Cousins at home, we know he's a solid quarterback. And a few weeks ago, he had the bad hiccup versus the Dallas Cowboys. But that was just a fluky game, in my opinion, the way it went down. Because Kirk Cousins last week, he came back with a vengeance on Thanksgiving night versus a tough New England defense, and he put up 27 fantasy points. So when you got a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson, a nice number 2 like Adam Thielen, and a great tight end like TJ Hawkinson, you're going to get the fantasy points early and often. And a lot of people still don't like Kirk Cousins. After that one bad game versus Dallas, he got dropped in about 10-15% of fantasy leagues, but he's a guy I can still count on. And this week here, I think that 20-plus fantasy game is definitely possible. Number 11, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, he's been pretty decent over the last month since he returned from his thumb injury. But last week here was a tale of two tapes. First half versus the New York Giants, 2 interceptions. Couldn't get anything going for this Dallas Cowboy team. And then the second half, he salvaged his fantasy day. We're passing for 2 touchdowns, ending up with 19 fantasy points. But this week here, I think this Cowboy team's going to take advantage early and often of this Indianapolis Colts defense on Sunday Night Football by running the football, where in this one I could only see Dak probably topping out at 20 points at most in this ball game, because this Colts defense, they are not that great versus the run. We saw the Steelers have a great ball game running it last week, and I think Dak here, he has a mediocre ball game, but still a guy at number 11 in the 12th and final quarterback I'm ranking this week here is Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Lawrence, no doubt about it, the last 3-4 weeks here, he's really taken it and ran with it now as Trevor Lawrence in terms of putting up fantasy points and putting up numbers to be a decent fantasy quarterback. And this week here, in a great matchup at a weak Detroit defense that gives up top fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season, I think Lawrence could go out there and have a decent ball game. Another guy with at least 20-plus point potential this week here is Lawrence. I like him over Tom Brady, obviously, who didn't make the cut. Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, guys like that. I think Lawrence is more consistent, and he also could run for about 4 to 6 points weekly on the ground here. So with a good matchup, him and Zay Jones in sync, and Christian Kirk having a great first season. Obviously, as a wide receiver over there at Jacksonville, and hopefully Travis Etienne playing in this one. Trevor Lawrence is definitely a quarterback. I have as a 12th guy this week, so that's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking for Week 13 of the fantasy football season.